After studying this module, you would be able to elucidate the major categories of performance appraisal methods. You would be able to understand the various types of performance appraisal methods, and you would know the pros and cons of different performance appraisal methods. Now, let us consider in this following discussion the various performance appraisal methods and discuss under the main categories, that is individual evaluation methods and multiple person evaluation methods. Individual evaluation methods. Individual evaluation methods are techniques where the standards of performance are defined individually. It is without reference to other persons. For instance, one of the main methods amongst the individual methods is the balanced scorecard. The balanced scorecard concept was introduced by Kaplan and Norton in 1992 to enhance the traditional management accounting reporting systems. It links organizational strategy and performance management by translating into measures the alignment with the organizational goals. Although it is a tool for managing organizational performance, but it can help to align employees' individual work with the overall strategy by communicating and educating, and by setting goals and linking rewards to performance measures. Armstrong and Barron in 2008 have clearly laid down this framework. According to them, no single measure can provide a clear performance target or focuses attention on the critical areas of business. Thus, they have suggested various perspectives to measure performance. Implementing a balanced scorecard requires an organization to set performance measures from 4 perspectives: financial, that is revenue; customer relations, that is customer loyalty; internal business processes, that is the number of processing errors; and learning and growth, that is the amount of training undertaken. By integrating financial and non-financial data, managers are provided with a more well-rounded perspective to make better strategic decisions. Kaplan and Norton have advocated an approach where there is a clear establishment of specific measures across each of these areas. Furthermore, McDonald and Gungil in 2009 have emphasized this aspect. Internal business measures should involve metrics which allow managers to know how well their business is running. Learning and growth measures are linked to the individual and the company's self-improvement through incorporating employee training and development and change in the organizational culture. The customer perspective includes the need to incorporate indicators of customer satisfaction. Performance targets are then set for each area. Some measures reflect results from the past and are called lag indicators. These are financial measures, while other measures predict future results and are called lead indicators, such as customer satisfaction. The relationship among these four perspectives play an important role in the organization's strategic map. Feedback derived from such measures enables an organization to refine its standards, objectives, and targets to track gaps and deviations and to compare performance between employees and units. Balanced scorecard is a simple, systematic, and easy to understand approach for performance measurement, review, and evaluation. It is a suitable mechanism to communicate strategy and strategic objectives to all management levels. We now consider something called behaviorally anchored rating scales or bars. The bar system is concerned with inputs in terms of the way employees display certain kinds of desired behavior. This system includes a number of performance dimensions such as teamwork, and managers rate each dimension on a scale. According to Lamb 2007, several methods can be used to decide which bars are to be used. In summary, these involve identifying the key behaviors on competencies required for effectiveness in the job, distinguishing between effective and ineffective performance for each behavior required. The behavior considered are then rated as a range across categories using either numbers such as 1 to 5 depicting the levels of performance, or several descriptions such as always behaves this way, never behaves this way. These are verbal descriptions or levels of measuring performance. Focusing the interview on discussing and agreeing where the employee's behavior fits each of these categories. We have now an example of a behaviorally anchored rating scale. The supervising sales personnel is being considered over here. This scale gives the different levels of effectiveness. In the case of sales personnel, and a clear idea of their job duties and responsibilities. It exercises tact and consideration in working with subordinates. This method combines major elements from the critical incident and the graphic rating scale approaches, which have been suggested by Robbins and Judge in 2009. In this method, the appraiser rates the employee based on items on a continuum, but the points are examples of actual behavior or the given job rather than the general description of the traits. For example, the job related behavior and the performance dimensions are found by asking participants to give specific illustrations of effective and ineffective behavior regarding each performance dimension. These behavioral examples are then converted into a set of performance dimensions, each dimension having varying levels of performance. The advantage is it helps to overcome rating error, but the disadvantage is that it suffers from divergence inherent in most rating techniques. We now consider the critical incident technique. CIT is a set of actions for collecting direct observations of effective and ineffective job behaviors. These observed incidents must have a special significance to the organization and must meet systematically the defined criteria. An incident must occur where the intent or the purpose of the behavior appears quite clear to the observer and where the consequences of its effects are unambiguous. The critical incident technique was created by John C. Flanagan. The critical incident can be described as those behaviors which represent success and failure in performing an important aspect of a particular job in a significant number of instances. The sources of the incidents may include supervisors, job incumbents, peers, clients, and subordinates, those who are familiar with or have been able to observe the events surrounding the job. Thus, this method of performance appraisal involved identifying and describing specific events or incidents where the employee did something really well or something that needs improvement. It's a technique based on the description of the event and does not depend on the assignment of ratings or rankings, although it is occasionally coupled with rating type systems. Thus, critical incidents focus on the evaluator's attention on the behaviors that are the key in making the distinction between executing a job effectively and executing it ineffectively. A list of critical events provides a rich set of examples from which the employee can be shown the behaviors that are pleasant and those that call for improvement. Here again, we will be considering three dimensions: continuing duties, targets, and critical incidents. Under continuing duties, we first will consider the schedule of production for the plant, and the target, let us say, is 90% utilization of personnel and machinery in plant and orders delivered on time. Now, the critical incidents could be instituted a new production scheduling system, decreased the late order by 10% last month, increased the machine utilization by 20% last month. Similarly, continuing duties could be that the supervisor procurement of raw material in inventory control, and the target is to minimize inventory costs while keeping adequate supplies on hand. And the critical incidents are the following: let inventory storage costs rise 15% last month, over ordered parts A and B by 20%, and under ordered part C by 30%. Finally, supervisor machinery maintenance, continuing duty. Target: no shutdowns due to faulty machinery. And the critical incidents could be instituted new preventive maintenance system for plants, prevented a machine breakdown by discovering a faulty part. Now, these examples of critical incidents are for an assistant plant manager. What are the advantages? Evaluations are based on actual job behavior. Ratings are supported by descriptions. Feedback is easy. Reduced recency biases. Chances of subordinate improvements are high. What are the disadvantages? Negative events can be prioritized. Forgetting incidents is possible. Overly close supervision may happen, and feedback may be a lot and may appear to be a punishment. 360 degrees appraisal and feedback. 360 degrees appraisal, also known as multi-source assessment or 360 degrees feedback, refers to the process by which performance appraisals are collected from different sources of individual supervisors, peers, subordinates, customers, and so on, and instead of relying on appraisals from a single source. The authors of this method are London and Smither in 1995. This is normally achieved through the use of questionnaires rather than face-to-face appraisals. 360 degrees feedback has been defined by Ward 1997 as the systematic collection and feedback of performance data on an individual or group derived from a number of the stakeholders on their performance. Stakeholders are people who are both affected by the performance and deal with the employee. 360 degrees feedback seems to be predominantly used as a development mechanism insofar as it provides a more rounded insight into how various stakeholders view performance. Fletcher in 2001 explained with the use of this kind of feedback in a developmental context, and if these are not addressed, the feedback will encounter problems. This may be the reason that some organizations who have introduced it for appraisal purposes dropped it in a few years' time. Also, he highlighted that there is very little research published so far linking use of multi-source feedback to performance improvement. The technique is highly useful in terms of broader perspectives, greater self-development, and multi-source feedback is therefore useful. 360 degrees appraisals are helpful to measure interpersonal skills, customer satisfaction, and team building skills. However, on the negative side, receiving feedback from multi-sources can be intimidating, threatening, etc. Multi-raters may be less adept at providing balanced and objective feedback. Graphic rating scales. A graphic rating scale is defined as any rating scale consisting of points on a continuum. Raters are presented with a description of a dimension on which the rates are to be evaluated and a continuum with anchor points that demarcate levels of effectiveness along that continuum. In 1922, Patterson developed graphic rating scales under which the rater records his or her judgment about some specific aspect of the rater's performance on a scale that can be used to obtain numeric values that correspond to the rater's evaluation of the rate. Murphy and Cleveland have also spoken about this method. Various performance factors are specified in the form such as quantity and quality of work, depth of knowledge, cooperation, attendance, and initiative are all listed. Graphic rating scales are less time consuming to develop and administer. This is the opinion of Robbins and Judge in 2009. Graphic rating scales are probably the most common rating format. They are fairly easy to construct. They have quite a high level of user acceptability, and they have a face validity. A drawback of such rating scales is that they are susceptible to rating errors which result in inaccurate appraisals. Advantage: adaptability, low cost, no formal training required, easy to use, every type of job can be evaluated, large number of employees can be covered. However, the disadvantage is rater's bias. Now we consider management by objectives. MBO or management by objectives is a practice accredited to the management guru Peter Drucker to describe a method of performance management that is based on the setting of clear and measurable objectives and the use of those objectives to evaluate and review performance. MBO involves participation in goal setting. In particular, MBO programs involve joint supervisor subordinate determination of specific goals and performance indicators. They set goals by agreeing on what needs to be accomplished and how accomplishments will be measured. It also requires objective feedback concerning progress towards goal achievement, accomplishment. It can be detailed as a process consists of 4 main stages as Price has described. Goal setting, this is the heart of MBO process. Goals are specific and desired results are to be achieved with an agreed period of time. They must represent real progress. They should be challenging, attainable, measurable and relevant. Alternatively, goals are sometimes set against the acronym SMART, linked to specific, measurable, agreed and realistic and time bound. Action planning, goals or performance are the ends of the MBO process. Action plans are the means. They require individual employees to ask themselves what, who, when, where and how the objective can be achieved. Self-control. MBO is a self-driven performance with each person participating in setting their own goals and action plans. Employees are expected to control their own behavior in order to achieve performance targets. In return, it is essential that they are given sufficient information and feedback to gauge their progress. Periodic reviews. It is not sufficient to review at the end of the MBO process. Individuals must be provided with an opportunity to check their performance at regular intervals so that obstacles can be identified. The advantage is that it is more useful for managerial positions. The disadvantage is that it is not applicable to all jobs. Allocation of merit pay may consequences in setting short-term goals rather than important long-term goals. And then we have the method of self-appraisal. Employees' self-appraisal involves asking employees to self-evaluate their job performance. Typically, prior to meeting with an employee, the manager asks the employee to complete an evaluation form on his own to be used as a basis for discussion during the annual performance review meeting. It helps to convey the message that the process of performance management and appraisal is a team effort and not something that the manager does as an individual. Written essay method. Perhaps the simplest method of evaluation is to write a narrative describing the employee's strength, weakness, past performance, potential and suggestions for improvement. Written essay requires no complex forms or rigorous training to complete. But in this method, a good or bad appraisal may be determined as much as the evaluator's writing skills as by the employee's actual level of performance. Thus, in this method, the evaluator writes an explanation about the employee's strength and weakness points, previous performance, positional and suggestions for improvement at the end of the evaluation term. There are other multiple person evaluation methods, and these techniques are those methods when the conduct of one employee is directly or intentionally compared with the performance of others. Forced distribution method. The forced distribution system is created to force the appraiser to fit the employees being appraised into predetermined ranges of scales. This system is based on the presumption that employees can be branched into 5-point scales of outstanding, above average, average, below average and poor. In this system, the appraiser is asked to distribute the employees into these categories in such a way that 10% are in the outstanding group, 20% in above average, 40% in average, 20% in below average, and 10% in poor. The objective of this technique is to spread out ratings in the form of a normal distribution which is open to criticism. Many times this categorization is not found to work in groups, particularly when the size of the group is comparatively small. As a matter of fact, forced distribution of ranking is feasible only for larger groups. Forced distribution methods may achieve their primary purpose of differentiating between individuals, but at the cost of lowering the overall effectiveness of the performance management system. Moreover, the individual skills and knowledge area showed greater decrease in effectiveness when forced distribution approaches were used. It fits the common complaint against forced distribution appraisals. Often the focus is on identifying different levels of performance rather than on helping individuals to improve their performance. The paired comparison method. Under this method, appraisers evaluate one individual's performance against the performance of other individuals. It's a relative measure rather than absolute measure. The method compares each employee with all others in the group one at a time. After all the comparisons on the above, the employees are given a final ranking. The paired comparison method involves ranking individual performances by counting the times individual is the preferred member when compared to all other employees. However, it can become extremely unmanageable and thus is highly impractical when compared to other methods, and the method virtually fails when there is a large number of employees. Then we have the ranking method, in which a rank is given to each employee in comparison to the others, and a straight ranking requires an evaluator to order a group of employees from the best to worst, and it can be from the most effective to the least effective based on certain criteria. But the supervisor's span of control increases. When the supervisor's span of control increases, ranking all the subordinates become tedious and sometimes arbitrary. No matter how close a group of employees is, the level of performance is very difficult to rank across large number of employees, and some will rank high and some will go at the bottom, and therefore this may not be a very effective method. In summary, there are several methods that can be used for performance appraisal. These include individual evaluation methods such as behaviorally anchored rating scales, balanced scorecard, critical incident technique, 360 degrees performance and feedback mechanism, the graphics rating scale, management by objectives, self-appraisal, written essay method, multiple person evaluation methods like forced distribution method, paired comparison method, and ranking method. The choice of a particular method depends upon the purpose of the appraisal and a careful evaluation of the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages, and some other criteria may be necessary.